I always say to guys is this, like, if you go out and you talk to a girl and you just talk about yourself the whole fucking time, is she interested in you?
Hell
No.
no.
She's gonna be like, yeah, screw this guy. This guy,
Yeah.
he just cares about himself. He
Arrogant.
thinks he's hot shit. Yeah,
Mhm.
like I don't want anything to do with it. But if you ask them a whole bunch of questions and you just keep asking questions and get them to talk, that's the first thing is you got to get them to talk. And questions get people to talk.
Mhm.
You're not just climbing trees, you're climbing destiny. Yeah!
What is going on? And welcome to another episode of the Branching Out podcast. On this podcast, we talk about all things on how to scale your tree business from marketing to sales. And, on this episode, we're going to talk about something that's been plaguing us, the industry, for a while, which is that most tree companies are stuck competing on price. They're bidding jobs, they're getting undercut, and then they wonder why they can't grow. So today's guest has built something different. Over 15,000 clients have been served, a board certified master arborist, and a company that doesn't win by being the cheapest, but by being the most trusted. So if you've ever felt like you're stuck in a race to the bottom, this episode is going to hit. And with that, Apollo, welcome to the Branching Out podcast.
Thank you. It's awesome to be on here and be able to talk to you about this subject. It's something I like to talk about a lot.
I love it. I love it. Let's rewind this a little bit. What did the early days look like for you?
So, dude, when I started, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I grew up sort of in a dairy farming community and worked on a dairy farm a lot as a kid. My uncle, I was on the farm 6 days a week, did all the stuff around that, hard work. My
Hmm.
dad cleared some land as a kid with bulldozers. So I probably like felled my first tree when I was like 5, I don't, I don't, that wasn't like, I don't really remember it real well. I just remember we had steel chainsaws. My dad only had one hand, by the way. So he ran it with a hook, right?
Well, that's gangster
He
though.
literally he really had this hook that went like this, right? And it had a little, like, thumb thing that you, like, pull on it and the hook would open up, so you'd, like, hold the back of the saw, and then I don't even know how he did
Dude,
it.
that's tough.
But oh, no, he had it on the top handle. He hooked the top handle, and then he had to run it with his left hand.
I
Anyway,
gotcha.
so I grew up around, like, that dude, my dad, and, I loved clearing land, I loved heavy equipment. So, as a kid, I grew up around that. I decided to go to college, because I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. So I was like, "Well, I guess I'll go to college, but I don't have any money. How about I heard there's this thing in California, it's called the governor's grant. If I have good grades, I can go to school for free out there." So I changed my residency out there. I had a friend that lived there, and he's like, "You could move in with me for a while." So I moved out there. I pushed my residency forward so I could establish residency, and got out there in Sacramento, California. Actually, is where I landed. Anyway, so I went to school for engineering, and I didn't actually finish. My college roommate convinced me to move to Florida. He was chasing a girl down here. I didn't even know that at the time.
Yeah.
But
That's how everybody ends up
and
in Florida, by the way.
yeah, so I wasn't gonna come, and then I was like, and I had been here. Well, actually, it was the girl he was chasing was my ex girlfriend's little sister.
Keep it in the family, I guess.
He talked yeah, right. So he talked me into coming here, and I was like, "All right, fine." And I was like, "Florida's hot, dude. I don't know." So, and I loved Northern California. One of my, if I could live it because of the outdoors and stuff, I'm an outdoors guy. I love that kind of stuff, hiking and snowboarding, skiing, mountaineering stuff like rock climb. That has everything. And so he somehow convinced me to come here. And so when I got down here, I got a job actually in a company making plasma etching tools, we basically made like integrated circuit board or machines that made integrated circuit boards. So like an Intel Pentium chip, right?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was like working in clean rooms, in a suit, like where you couldn't get any dust anywhere. And I was like, man, this sucks. Like, this is not what I went to. Like, I went to school to
Yeah, not
do
being an outdoor
something
guy, you're
engineering
like,
wise, right? I'm like, this is terrible. I don't know if I can do this for my life. And I was always like, I've always been like a stick up for the wimpy guy or kind of guy, So there was like a bunch of situations at that place I was working where, like they started kind of treating people like not so great. They had like approved radio stations and you weren't allowed to talk at work. It just got ridiculous, and so I ended up getting into it with the sort of production manager and I left. And I was like, I'm gonna start my own business. So I had different things I was looking at and I thought, if I get into like landscaping, I can get into excavation. I liked that as a kid. And like none of my friends, nobody I knew was doing that. So I also
Yeah.
it's important for me to not compete against my friends. I was just like, I don't want to, I
How
always wanted
now
to be a business owner.
how old are you at this time when you're like, because
So,
I didn't think about starting a business until I was like in my late 30s. You know what I mean?
oh, I wanted to start a business like right early on. Like even before I was out of high school, I wanted to be a business owner, right? Um, I don't know that I definitely did not plan on this. So like that wasn't in the plan. Actually, I was like, I got really into the stock market game in high school, which was like a thing they played it statewide. And I placed like 13th in the state. So I was really interested in
Wow.
that. And my dad said some things that made me not so interested. And he's like, oh, it's like gambling. There's no production. You don't produce anything. You just like, whatever. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. It kind of seems like I'm not like exchanging for my money, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I moved away with that. Anyway, that comes back later anyway. But so at this time I'm probably 24 or so.
Nice.
And so I got into landscaping with the intention to do excavation. It wasn't like I didn't get into landscaping to necessarily do landscaping. So, I just had someone come out one day that was like a customer was mowing their lawn and they're like, "Hey, I need my tree trimmed. Will you do it?" And I looked across the street and I was like, "Sure." Like I
I
looked
can
at
do that.
the tree that got trimmed across the street. I climbed up there with, holding on to the chainsaw and no harness or nothing and trimmed the
Just,
tree
that's
and
awesome.
butchered the absolute shit out of it because I didn't know what I was doing. I just did what the other guy did. I didn't know that what he did was
I was gonna
wrong,
say,
you know?
by your standards today, you butchered it, but in reality, it's probably an average job.
Honestly, it's the same thing that most people even do today. It's nothing's really changed, I just didn't know. I didn't know anything about arboriculture, and so, then we speed up a little bit. I keep kind of doing like landscaping, a little bit of trees, and trying to still break into excavation. I like tree work, and I realized quickly that like landscape dudes did not like tree work, and tree guys did not like landscape work. That was like I couldn't get them to do one or the other, so I was like, I'm gonna have to end up making a choice at some point. Because they just won't do either one. They didn't want to do either one, even though I had gotten into irrigation. I did really like that. I got fined a bunch actually from the PCCLB, and then the last punishment was prison. So I was like, I better quit doing that.
They're serious.
Yeah, yeah, they weren't messing around. It was the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board, so they were like, if you get another offense, then it's like jail time. And I was like, well, I better stop. So
Find something else.
people were like turning me in because I was advertising that I do irrigation. And, now they canceled the damn license, but you had to have a license back then. Anyway, that's so I continued doing tree work and my passion kind of grew from there. I hadn't started O'Neill's at that point, but I was out there doing it wrong. I ran into a guy who sort of became my mentor. We were introduced through mutual friends, and he took me out to dinner one night. Maybe this is a year or something into doing it, and he was like, his wife and him were visiting in town. He's very successful, by the way. A lot of people know him in the industry, but he primarily does disaster relief, but he has a very big tree service. And he told me in the beginning, like, don't get in this business. It's not what you think. It's like nobody, you'll earn a living, but you'll never create a bunch of wealth for yourself doing tree work. Like this, he's like, but he said storm work, maybe. He didn't know at the
Yeah.
time because he was kind of starting to really get going at tree work at storm. I mean, I guess he'd been doing it a few years when I met him, but anyway. So I tell him we go out to dinner, and he basically tells me that he hates people like me, and that I'm like fucking ruining the industry, and that I should quit, and I'm gonna kill myself, and I'm gonna kill somebody else, like because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? And I was like,
That's a
"What's he?"
fun dinner conversation.
So this is the best part. So then my wife's kind of like, "What?" Like she didn't really know. We just had our first baby. She saw me like come. She had an idea because like see me come running down off the top of someone's roof and literally jump into the tree
Holy
off the
shit.
house, like an idiot. No rope, no nothing. And so he knew that I didn't know what I was doing because he was well educated in trees. He was already, I think, a certified arborist at the time. And he had been in the industry quite a long time already, trained under another really big company in New York that he worked with. And so he knew what he was talking about. So his company's in Ohio. So we left dinner, and on the way home, so we'll go like 6 months. 6 months later, I was like, I took my arborist exam and passed. So I called him. I was like, hey, I'm a CA now. And he was like, is this the guy I ate dinner with in Florida? I was like, yeah. And he's like, you passed your certified arborist exam? I was like, yeah. He's like, I thought you were an idiot. Like, I guess maybe you're not as much of an idiot as I thought, right?
You got
So
a
then he
couple
tells
extra
me,
points.
yeah. So then he tells me that on the way home, his wife chews him out. She's like, this is why you have no friends, because you're an asshole. You just treat everybody like crap. Tell them they're idiots. And he's like, well, I probably saved his life. That's what he said, right?
I mean, that's real. Sometimes we need to
He
hear the
probably
honest
did.
truth from somebody.
He probably did. Anyway, that guy's amazing, and he's been so successful. He's still someone I really admire and look up to. I don't talk to him as much anymore. He still like goes and does storm work, and I just really don't do that. I mean, I'll do a little bit of like lifting trees off houses, but I don't do hauling, which is what he primarily does. So that's kind of how I wound up here. Long story short, it was kind of by accident, and climbing is what hooked me into the industry, because I was like, this is awesome. I can get paid to climb trees. And I love climbing trees. I did it for free when I was a kid, and I didn't know a lot about it at the time. So it seemed like a fun thing to do. And that's what happened. I became passionate about trees later. So when I started, dude, I didn't consider numbers. I think when I look back, there's like a couple of things that I really overlooked. And I was just saying this to someone the other day. Like, I loved the climbing side of things, and I always wanted to know how to do everything, right? But I wasn't operating as like an owner or an executive. So I didn't know my numbers. I didn't understand that like at some day I might want to have managers or executives or people in the office. So I did not charge for those things. I overlooked finance heavily. I knew marketing was like something I really needed to pay attention to. I was very interested in it, but I should have figured it out further than I did. That was a big deal. I think my personal opinion is that marketing and sales drives everything. So like
100%. Yeah.
if you can't
I
market,
have a favorite quote, which is that there's no problem in my business that more revenue can't solve. And the reality is if I've got a problem that I don't have the answer to, I can go find somebody that has the answer and pay them to solve it for me. But there's nothing I can do in my business that will just make more business come in, right? Like,
yes, yes. Yeah, I think you're so right. So like I would say finance is one thing that people really overlook, especially like worker oriented. You probably read the E-Myth, I would imagine. But
yep,
if
it's
you
back here
haven't,
somewhere.
I suggest it. I suggest it to everyone. Like if you think about it, like there's technical oriented entrepreneurs, we'll call them. And I was that. Obviously, I wanted to start a business younger, but I was very technically oriented too. So like taking a step back and looking at other things that mattered to a business was not what I considered. And so those things, I felt like I really dropped the ball on those things, finance being the number one thing. I did like when I started my business, I did put a lot of money into marketing. The only problem is I wasn't paying attention to results so much.
Yeah. So it was just,
In a
and
way,
that
right?
we run into that all the time where it's like, well, I've spent, $3,000. Okay, well, what was your return? And a lot of times people don't know the answer to that. And it's just because they don't have
Right.
the proper tracking in place. It's funny because one of my questions that I was going to ask to you, we're sort of already kind of getting into, which is what do you think separates, like, what was your experience with that shift? Like, thinking about the concepts of the E-Myth or the E-Myth Revisited and going from that mindset of, for me, it's I got to be the guy building the websites to like, I need to hire for somebody to build the site. I need to be directing and learning and
Yeah.
growing. Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah. So I first of all, I'd recommend quite a few books when it comes to finance, but the E-Myth was great as an entrepreneur. But I'd say Profit First is a game changing book.
I just
And
got to
I'd
see
say,
him speak. That
yeah, I
the
saw
guy
that. That's
Michael,
fucking so
yeah,
awesome.
it was dope.
Mike Michalowicz,
Yep,
I'd love to meet that dude. But
yeah, he was
Robert
super cool.
Kiyosaki has two great books, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I think the one that really shifted my whole mindset on money and the power of my business as an asset was The Unfair Advantage, which was also by Robert Kiyosaki.
I've heard that's the guy that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
I've
that's
read
the
that.
book, but people don't talk about that book, and I don't
I
get it.
haven't
I'm
read
like,
it.
man, dude, game changing. Like it shit. Now I would recommend that while you read it, you do the research. Like as he's talking, I'm kind of like that. I read and then I'll like look into things as I'm reading.
Mhm.
I really am like very skeptical, I guess, in a lot of things. So I like to look and see for myself, which
Yeah.
is probably good and bad. So I did a lot of research when I read his book and I felt like I really understood it. I should probably even reread it again because I think it's that valuable of a book.
Hmm. I'm
And
gonna
then The
order it
Richest
right
Man in
now.
Babylon, Richest Man in Babylon, I try to pay my employees to read that book.
Yeah, do you?
I bought yeah, I bought The Question Before the Question, or The Question Behind the Question, QBQ, it's called. It's by Miller. I bought that for all my employees. I mean, I've paid my employees to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I feel that like my team, if they have less financial problems, they're more in the game and
Yeah.
they have less problems and they're less likely to leave over a couple bucks, like if someone
100%.
offers them a little bit more money because I'm offering something more, right? Like it's not just money. I'm also offering like I actually care about them and their success too. Like
Yeah.
it's not just about this business.
It's
So
almost
like
like
I want
you get to return the mentorship to the guys that work for you.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, those are books that I think like shape a lot of the financial mindset that I have. Although I would say that currently I'm not being great at that. I did get really good at it. I got super into the finance and I had ignored it from the beginning, dude. Like
Yeah.
I kept hiring people to like take care of the money, take care of the money, and I literally would go and get a paycheck and not care. Like
Yeah.
literally, yeah. I mean, I can't even tell you how bad that is to have that mindset, but it's bad. Don't do that.
If you're listening to this and you haven't read Profit First, I'm going to let you know that one of the most painful days in my business ownership career was when I actually implemented Profit First and I
Yeah,
realized this is why I don't have any freaking money. And
that's right.
so it was a
Yeah,
game changer for
when
us
you do
too.
the taps. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So
My target allocation percentages, it
yeah,
was
I'm very
that's why we're
familiar.
broke.
Yeah. And, in reality, like I've been trying to do all these other endeavors and stuff like that, and it does make it hard to make them, I'm not like currently running Profit First as it should be run because it works. Like when you run it, it works. And so I think that's a super valuable thing. I've gotten a lot of my friends to read it. It's changed their lives.
Yeah. Yeah,
Even
it
their
is one
per
of those.
even dudes that didn't own businesses, they just applied it to their own personal life.
And so after doing that, like I'll share that my personal finances were a wreck too. I was living on 98% of, my income. And so since reading that and adjusting our business finances, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should live on like 60%. And then I have
Right.
money to do the other things with, make the investments, set aside money for savings. And so yeah, it's the concept is super powerful.
It is, and it's tough. Like he'll tell you in the book, because here's the thing. Like we just talked about the volume game in the beginning, right? Or I don't know if we talked about it here. We maybe talked about it at the beginning of this,
I
but
think it was
there's the
pre-call. Yeah.
volume game and there's the profit game, right? The volume game gets you in trouble because you lose track of what's profitable and you hire people and you grow this big amount of team. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't have any money. And like Justin's saying here, or like you're saying, when we look at like where we should be, it could be really eye awakening or eye opening that like what you've built is actually not sustainable. And and that's what I was talking about too in the beginning. If you build with no financial mindset from the beginning, like fighting back from that is a nightmare. Like
Yeah.
like
You have to do like I've had to make some layoffs that like that brought me to tears
hurts.
because these
It
people
hurts.
that like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it was just the
Because you love
business
the
was not
people.
sustainable.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But you're like,
So
dude, I'm gonna be out of business if I don't,
right. And you're gonna have to
and that
find the job anyway,
yeah,
so
but you go about business and you're working for these customers for years and you don't really know your numbers and you don't really know if you're making money and all these things. And you think you're making money, but really you're paying the IRS and you're paying interest payments and then there's no profit left to grow the business. And, you look at these things later on and then your guys keep selling that same work. Well, if you were to go back and use, Mike Michalowicz talks about it in his book, and I've heard it other reference it. I think Kiyosaki references it. I've heard it in plenty of other places, but Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your
20% of your
clients,
customer. Yeah.
right? And that's the hard truth. So, like, I personally think that this industry and most others, and I see it like I have a lot of friends in California still, like almost all my friends out there, they don't have, like, if they're a contractor, they don't have any employees. Like they sub everything and everybody has to have a license. Like you have to have a state license to do tree work in California, right? But they've made it so expensive and so hard to do it that like no one actually expands anything. They just have this like they go out, the contractors especially, they sub all the work and they make a huge profit, but they don't want to grow because you bring on this staff and then all of a sudden you see your profit margins go down. You're like, well, wait a minute, now I'm working for my employees,
Right, exactly.
you know?
So a lot of this, well, the conversation that we're having now sort of bridges into one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on, which is to talk about sales, because all these things, right? If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, profit first, you start reading the book, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to start setting aside money for this, setting aside money for that. What that means is that now your prices need to go up. And so it seems like I have a lot of conversations with guys I see on all the Facebook groups where they're like mad about people underbidding their jobs and they're trying to compete on price. So, how did you get out of that mindset from competing on price to actually figuring out a way to charge what you're worth?
So, I guess I don't know exactly how that happened. I think it's just that I started like going down the road of understanding the numbers and I had read different things and I realized like this isn't going to work. I built this business around myself and I always tried not to do that. Like in fact, dude, this is funny. I used to be like up in a tree and I would answer the phone and be like, O'Neill's tree service. And someone would be like, is it Paul there? I'm like, oh, let me check. And they're like, well, this sounds like, I'm like, no, it's Joe. Like, and then I'd like put the phone down for a second and they'd be like, hey, like, oh, you sound like the same dude.
Yeah, my name's
So
Jeff.
yeah, my name is Jeff. Yeah. I was always trying to make my company look bigger than it was. Right.
Yeah.
And so that it wasn't just on me. And little did I know, I thought I was making it like not about me, but by pricing it the way I was pricing in the beginning, I was making it all about me. Like there's no way I'm ever going to get out of that loop. If I don't have the prices that support the rest of the group, you know what I mean? And so it's hard, especially if you asked, I've asked a lot of guys that have done tree work all over this country. And a lot of them will tell you like Pinellas County is the hardest place to have a tree service.
Why is that?
Well, it's the most densely populated county in the state per square mile. You have very picky people. And a lot of the workforce is coming in from other places where they don't need to charge prices that are realistic, right? And you have a ton of tree services in Pinellas County. I mean, they're everywhere, but you see a lot here. There's a lot of competition here. Tight yards. You don't have a lot of tree canopy. People think, oh, we got a lot of tree canopy, like they think of Tampa, right? But if you think at each property, they only have one or two, three, maybe three trees. That's not really like how do you make a day out of a 2 or 3 tree property?
Right.
Like so for us, one of the big things that we look at, and I know Bartlett looks at these, Davies looks at these, a lot of the smart tree services look at something called, well, they'll call it different things. So you have return per man per hour. You might see it from Bartlett, but other ones might call it utilization rate, right? So what we do is we look at it as billable, unbillable hours, and then overhead, right? So like we look at every crew and we look at how much time they're driving, how much time they're on jobs, and how much time they're at the shop. And those are all
Okay.
broken out every week, right? And why would you want to know that? Here's why. In Pinellas County, we found that our guys are spending, we actually been doing a lot of correction on this. We were spending almost 50% of our clocked in hours not on a job site.
Oh, really? Just
So
either
if
in
you
the
let that
shop or
sink in
driving?
a little bit, like
Yeah.
that's not sustainable. Like you're going to go bankrupt doing that. So like if you don't pay attention to that stuff, it'll get you, you know?
And what do you use to track that? If somebody's listening to that and they're like, that's cool. Is that something you're doing in like single ops or job? How are you tracking that? Manual, spreadsheet?
Yeah. So Jobber, I have another business that we use Jobber and it's pretty good. So it has some stuff in there that you can track some of that stuff. But my tree service uses single ops, I don't know. I think Jobbers is better, really. But
Yeah. Well, we're not
for plant
sponsored by single ops, so you can say that.
yeah. But for the sake of like you know what I like about Jobber is it tracks, so single ops is really good for plant healthcare, right?
Hmm.
Because they have a tree inventory map, and you can do that part of your business better with single ops. But from a business standpoint, I think Jobber is actually better because the reports can connect through a lot of APIs. But like single ops has no APIs really. They say
Mm.
they'll give you an API key, but it's really hard to get it.
I got you. You
And
have to like apply
and it
for it or something. Is
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and they don't even really give it out that I know of. I mean, I've tried not being super easy. I have a Jobber integration with my software business, which is Prospect Primer. And so we're right in the Jobber marketplace. You can go get the app on your phone and use it. And that's what's cool with like Call Rail, which is an awesome service, or What Converts,
Hmm.
we've used a lot.
They're
You
good
have
too.
Go High Level, you have all these things that can track because this is the thing. And this is what we just talked about in the beginning. What matters is marketing and sales, right? Because if you don't have any work, you could be the best tree guy in the world, but if you don't have work to do, it doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
So it is so important that you track those and know those numbers and know what works, what doesn't work. And I think Jobber gets you there faster. I see a lot of tree guys that know their numbers faster with Jobber than they do with other things.
Yeah,
That said,
I think it's like one of those where I think single ops is a more comprehensive platform, but Jobber is a
yes,
lot more user friendly, and so more people adopt it, and so then you're able to actually get the metrics that you want.
yeah,
So ease of use
I
for
think you're
sure.
I think you're right. I mean, I've used Arbor Star, I've used Arbor Gold, I've tried all of them pretty much. So like anyway, Single Ops has a report now that's easier to figure out your revenue per man hour, basically.
That's awesome.
But you have to enter in all the data, and that's a lot of work. Like it has Single Ops does have a function now where you can enter in your expenses and your labor. They've had labor, but now you have like single line items. I think that's probably been like that for a while, but you can put in like drive time, debris costs, maybe if you're doing cabling and bracing, whatever the materials were. You could even throw expenses in on each piece of equipment. So you actually really have like a job cost. And that I think is where everybody needs to get to if they can. I know it's really hard to do. I'm not perfect at it either. I mean, I remember even a few years ago, I kept telling people like I would ask them questions like, do where your best source of marketing is? Do you know what your average is per man hour? And like guys would go, that's how I price jobs, right? Oh, $500, right? It's like,
Yeah. Check their
oh,
account in the morning. Ooh, that next job's going to be a big one.
oh, dude, some of the guys have done really great. So, I don't know. They must have good intuition. But
So what does a perfect estimate look like to you?
so, a perfect estimate I guess in what way? What do you mean?
I guess like if you're looking at it from like how are you
The
dissecting an
customer?
estimate? Like, well, I mean, are you looking at it from like this amount goes to the business, this amount's going to maintenance, this amount is going to marketing? Do you think about it like that, or do you just have like a set number per hour and then base it off of the hours that you think it's going to take to do the job?
Yeah, great question. So we price it based off of hours and time, right? But where I was going with the Pinellas County thing is the drive time is really bad, right? And that's what I was saying. The billing, you got to really look at that. So, what might mean for us is we either got to tighten our area or maybe have like satellite shops or satellite parking places, possibly that we could drive out of. If you stack jobs in one area and you have a truck sit over there for a week, then you can cut out that drive time. It becomes more profitable, right? I know other
Hmm.
tree services that like don't pay drive time. I don't believe in that. I've never been that way. I always pay drive time. I pay my lunches as well. Like I just pay
Yeah,
them for lunch, and I tell them you have to take a lunch, but I'm going to pay you for lunch. Like
yeah, yeah. We do the
just
same.
right,
Hungry people don't work very well, you know.
right, right, right. So that's kind of our thing. And so knowing these numbers ties into these things. And so like when you're bidding a job and you're getting outbid, and just know that that guy probably won't be around very long, or
Yeah.
maybe he will be because he's happy with the way he lives. So I always tell my guys this. I say, look, just because that guy's willing to do it for half of what we are doesn't mean that he's bad at this or he's a bad guy, right? But there is one factor that we may not be considering, and that is something like Carson talks about it is being there. I say havingness, right? So like what you want to have in life might be different what the other guy want to have. So if the guy's happy to live, in a rural property in a mobile home and get a 6-pack of beer at the end of the day, and that's his idea of life, doesn't mean he's a bad guy. But like I want to travel with my family and I want to have retirement and I want to be able to enjoy life and go places and do things and I don't want to stress out about money and I want to know that if my guys get hurt, they'll be taken care of. Like all those things matter to me and it doesn't make that guy better than me or worse than me and it doesn't make me better, right? That just means that that's what he's happy with. And so that's really hard to account for in that business. In this business, unfortunately, there's a lot of guys like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
And
think
I think that
that's
goes for like
frustrating.
every business though, is that we have this fascination with like, well, if I have a business, I'm supposed to grow it. Well, not necessarily. I mean, like if you're happy with your income, you're happy with the way that your life looks, then why add more stress to it? On the flip side, like you mentioned, if you have ambitions and you really do want to build something large, then you're going to have to charge appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's an old adage, right? It's like it's a fisherman, right? Like he's standing on the shore casting his line in the water. He's got a little hammock set up behind him, and the business guy comes up and he's like, "Hey man, why don't you get a boat and go out there and fish? That's where all the fish are." And he's like, "Yeah, but then I'd have to like go work more to get a boat." And the guy's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, but you could make so much money. Then you could sell the fish, and then you could get another boat, and then another boat, and then you have a big fleet, and you have all these people working for you, and then blah 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 blah." And the guy goes, "Yeah, but like I love my life the way it is,
Yeah.
you know."
Yeah.
So
I'm
like
going to do
that's
all
what
that
you're
so that I
dealing with,
can vacation and just go fishing.
right? Like you ever watch Yellowstone?
Yeah. Yeah. Love that show.
So there was the spinoff 1924. If you remember, there's a scene where they're walking down a street in like Wyoming or something, and it's the advent of the refrigerator and the ice maker. And she walks up and she's like, "What is this thing?" And he's like, "Oh, you can store your food in here and keep it cold, you know?" And she's like, "Well, what's this washing machine?" And he tells her, "You wash all your clothes for you, you know?" She's like, "Well, what's it all cost?" And he's like, "Well, it's this, or you could take payments, you know?" And she's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, but then I'll just be working for you,
Yeah. So I just
right?"
clean my clothes myself.
Yeah. And I didn't have to work my ass off to pay for all this crap. It's like this, he's like, it's convenience. And then you get to have a life of, basically dicking off, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what he says to her, right? This lifestyle of traveling and seeing places and whatever, which is cool. Don't be wrong. But it does have a cost.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I always think is cool or interesting is like you got these people that are not bad guys, but their life is different than what I want. So you are going
Yeah.
to fight that. And people have to
So,
realize that. Like your prices aren't going to be the same. But if you really want to play the game right, know your numbers. And then that's where the sales part ties in and what we were intending to talk about, which we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of other things. But I had seen somewhere, read somewhere, this guy, I think, maybe I was in a seminar. I'm not a trained salesperson at all, right? Like I never took any sales training. It's all been like me learning and then now I've read a lot. So I guess that's some sales training, right? But
yeah, you're
he was talking about
certified
the
now.
5. Yeah, yeah. He was talking about the 5 buying factors, and I thought that was really interesting. So, like, the idea is that when you're in sales, when you go out to talk with someone, the first thing you have to establish is trust. But it's trust in you, the person they're talking to, right? It's not trust in the company or trust in anything else. If someone doesn't trust you, they won't buy from you, right? So, how do you get someone to trust you and you've never met them? A lot of guys will say, like, "Oh, he's a silver fox," or, "He's got a silver tongue," or he knows how to, schmooze people or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, I guess for me, I just ask a lot of questions, right?
Yeah.
So I find that if I ask a lot of questions, I'll probably find some things that we have similar ideas or thoughts or opinions about, or things that we like, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm hanging out with you and I'm like, hey, dude, you like fishing? And you're like, yeah, I love fishing. I'm like, yeah, dude, one time I went out, we went 70 miles offshore, we caught all these fish. It was awesome. Like, you ever done something like that? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. So you get someone talking about something they're passionate about or they like, and then you're going to notice their trust in you is going to come up because you're getting to know them each other. It's like meeting a girl for the first time. Like you guys go out on your first date, you don't really know each other. She didn't trust you yet.
Right.
Like what did it take for her to trust you?
Show an interest and ask questions. I think we have a lot of salespeople have the mindset that, okay, I need to get somebody's attention, and then here's my basically my PowerPoint that I'm going to pitch you on the product. And like, if you go out there and try to understand what
Yeah.
does the customer need, why do they have this need, why is it urgent now, is it urgent now, then you can make a recommendation.
Well, a
And it,
suggestion I always say to guys is this, like, if you go out and you talk to a girl and you just talk about yourself the whole fucking time, is she interested in you?
hell
No.
no,
She's gonna be like, "Yeah, screw this guy. This guy,
yeah,
he just cares about himself. He
arrogant,
thinks he's hot shit. Yeah, like I don't want anything to do with it." But if you ask them a whole bunch of questions and you just keep asking questions and get them to talk, that's the first thing is you got to get them to talk. And questions get people to talk, right? And then if you can find things that you have commonalities on, you can actually start to communicate about something that's different than just, like how cool everything is that you have or whatever, right? So, and I think that's where we get lost. Like in sales, we have a tendency, especially in the service industry, to spend our time on the third most important volume factor, which is the product and service, right? Instead of the first, which is like if I go to your house, like I want to talk to you about like your kids, your house, like fishing, boating, rock climbing, whatever you travel. Like, oh yeah, I've been to Europe. I've been to Europe. Where you been to Europe? Like, oh, I've been to
yeah,
South Africa. I've been to. Oh, you drink wine, whatever, right? Like those are the things I'm trying to talk about, right? So that's what I think builds trust, and that's how we should be approaching it. Not in some sleazy, sly way, but like in a way where like, if you get on a subject you have interest in, then your passion will come forward,
hmm,
right? It'll make you a lot more likable too, right? Especially if
yeah,
you hit on things you have similarities. Now you get these guys that get out there and then they start talking about like politics and religion, like that's probably not a good idea.
not a great strategy.
Yeah, I have done that. I have asked questions and most of the time I've been right, but I have been wrong a couple of times.
Those are
So,
painful.
yeah. And then I'm like, I mean,
I mean, no,
yeah,
no, that's not what I meant.
yeah, yeah. So find things that people would likely agree on in general or have in common, right? Like, and it's not
Mhm.
rocket science. I have like a list that I give my guys of questions they can ask if they don't know what to ask. Because sometimes people have a little tough time getting a conversation started. It's never really been a problem for me, but so. And then second is the trust and credibility, which I believe is, and these are in order of importance, right? So like most important is you, then it's credibility and image. So that comes back to like, how does your company look? Right? Are your trucks clean and neat? What's the credibility of your company? Right? When they called in to talk to the person in reception or that answered the phone, were they nice and friendly? Is the reputation around the neighborhood good? Are the reviews good? Those kind of things are the credibility and image of the company. And it is important. And I always say, it's like if you compare like why does a dude buy a BMW instead of a Toyota? Like, well, a BMW is a driving experience, right? So like that's why you bought it. And you wanted the image and the credibility that comes with it. But if you wanted a car that was going to last longer, Toyota would probably
You
be
get a Toyota.
probably a better bet, right? So you have that happens in service too, especially in the right vein of customers. So like you probably since you're a marketing guy, right? Like you've heard of like you find the vein of gold, right?
Mhm.
You're looking for that vein of gold and then you're going to follow it all the way down that
Yep.
thing, right?
Yep.
And so that's like
Yeah.
mining. You got to know, you want to, like, we really try to pay attention to who our customers are. Like, where do they go to church? Where do they hang out? Who do they hang out with? What are they into? Like, how can I meet them? Right?
Yes, exactly.
How do I get in front of them? And then you got to, if you can find commonalities between them, like, okay, I noticed that, these 10 customers here, they all go to the same church. Man, maybe I should do like a tree planting program on church
Something. Yeah.
properties. Yeah. Like something to get in front of the same people, right? Because that's the vein of gold. That's your thing, right? So this credibility and image thing, that circulates around that group too, right? So if you can keep your, the image and credibility of the company good, that's good. So like certifications, awards, you're promoting those things, not because you're trying to be like high and mighty, but because a lot of good clients care about that stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The ones that
Right.
are
So
gonna though, especially the ones that are going to pay more than bottom dollar. That's what
Right.
they're looking for.
Yeah. So you've read like Purple Cow. Do you like Seth
Yes. Well,
Godin?
I started
Yeah,
it.
like
I started it. I have it. I haven't read it all the way through.
yeah, so like Seth Godin, I love his book. He's got Tribes. He's got All Marketers Are Liars. I think Purple Cow Marketing is one of his. I like the one page marketing plan, by the way, a lot. And Think They Ask and You Answer is probably my favorite of all. Oh, and Building a Story Brand, another great book.
Yeah, building a story brand is amazing.
Yeah, great book. But I actually have. It's funny. I have something like I just actually came across it because I wrote it down. It was like something from Purple Cow, and I was like, man, that's so good. I need to like bring that back. Oh, a sign. And I don't know if this is from Purple Cow, but where I got it from, somewhere. A sign is advertising. A sign on a truck in a parade or down the road, and on our truck or our guy's shirts doing help for someone, and it gets a story done about it or written and sent out. This is publicity, right? So you have advertising. A sign is advertising. What is publicity? A story gets done about it and then it's set out to the public. That's publicity, right? A sign, a logo on a truck doing some help, and it's shown on the news or published somewhere, and the mayor or I don't know what that says. I can't read my own writing. Um, the mayor or someone comes to uh, post about your good deeds. This is publicity. And if they come in or call and buy, that sales, right? So it's like the plan is marketing, but you got advertising, you have publicity, and you have I said advertising, publicity, PR. That is publicity. Anyway, there's a whole thing in that book which I love the way he writes it, but he says exactly like this is what you walk this elephant through the flower bed, and the mayor comes over and says, "Oh, look at this silly elephant," whatever, right? And that gets in the
Yeah.
news, and then everybody reads about it, right? So it's like whatever you can do to get the publicity part of it, and the
Yeah.
credibility and image is huge, right? So,
Yeah.
and then I think third is the public is the product and service, and that's like where most service businesses spend all their time. Like they come in and they talk about themselves. Like, I'm so great. This is why I'm so good. And this is exactly how we do it. And the customer's like, you ever hear like someone said to me the other day, it's this new thing you hear. I my daughter say it, but mansplaining, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, shit, I do that.
I
I gotta
know.
stop that. I'm probably irritating the shit out of these women. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care, like
My favorite thing to say is like, have you ever heard of mansplaining? And then I proceed to mansplaining too. Yeah.
right. So this is the thing, right? So we spend all this time in this product and service, like, but no one cares about that compared to these other things. I'm not saying it isn't relevant or it's not important to some degree, but the amount of time we spend on it is not as important as we think it is. And damn sure, dude, like the more and more I've done this, the more I've realized like how unimportant it is to most people. Like you're almost like talking to the wall,
And
right?
you're
So
talking
like,
yourself out of a sale, right? Like
that's right. Cause they're like, oh,
we learned
I gotta go. This guy.
exactly. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily care about the hydraulic lines in your skid steer, right? Like,
Right.
like
That's right.
I had to
Yeah.
learn, we would get on sales calls back when we were just an SEO agency, and I find myself trying to explain SEO to tree guys, and they're like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't care about backlinks and networks and all these things. Like, I
Yeah.
just want to know, is my phone gonna ring? And I was like, oh, maybe if we just talked about what the outcome is, then people
Right.
would be more likely to buy. And I think there's a lot of that in this industry too, is like, if what is the homeowner or the customer, what is the goal? What are they wanting to experience? And what are their concerns and fears around the process? And how is your company going to prevent those things from happening and make sure that the goal is met, right? Like, that's what we need to be talking about, not all the granular details about every single thing
Yeah.
that we're going to do.
Yeah. So it's back to that question things, which came in the beginning anyway. Right.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
like those questions get you that. So like when you first walk up to the door, like myself, when I walk up, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the paint on the house. I'm looking at the trees. I'm looking at the cars. I'm trying to find anything that I think is nice or that I might have some liking for myself, right? I see a basketball laying there next to a basketball hoop. Probably got kids or they play basketball, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
just all these things are going into my head. And then I get there, I'm like, hey, Apollo, my name's Apollo. You know, how can I help you? Or what's your name? I say what their name is. "Well, how can I help you today? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Cool. So they usually get off the porch or wherever at that point, they start walking you around. And then one of my next questions is, hey, I just, while we're walking around before we get too far along, would it be helpful to you if I pointed out any problems I see in your tree or landscape today? I'm an arborist and I might have some insight on that. Or would it be helpful to you if I pointed out
Yeah,
any problems with your trees or plants? Because I'm asking if I can consult them at that point, right?
exactly. Yep.
Right. So, and then a clear yes or a no is great because then you know where they stand on that subject and you just
Mhm.
move off of it. If if they're like, yeah, I don't give a shit about my trees.
All
I
right.
hate trees. It's like,
I
well,
hate trees. I want them
it's
gone.
probably pointless to spend your time trying to talk to them about plant health care then, right?
You're right.
So
Right.
so then I'm asking questions about them and their property and stuff. And I try to keep it, like I get back to the backyard and they're like, I want to cut this way back to the property line. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? And a lot of times they look at me real funny, like you're the only guy that asked that question. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's kind of odd. Like, are you scared of the tree or something? Like, whatever it is. So I want to know the motivation and that gives you more things to talk about, right? And it also gives you a goal, right? And that you can be clear to them about. So like the other guys in there, they walk them out and they walk to the tree and they goes, cut this branch, that branch, and that branch. He goes, cool, here's a price. You might as well, you know, like the only reason you're getting hired at that point is because you're cheap.
Yeah. You're cheap.
That's
You're
it.
there. Yeah. That's it.
You're there,
Like,
you're convenient, whatever. You might
I
have got
try
a
to
job
ask
because whatever, but if you don't
Right.
put
I
down
try to
goals and
ask questions
objectives,
that are like,
yeah,
I want to talk, I want to talk myself out of a job, right? Like
yeah,
I love the question of, well, I'm not sure. Like, I like to think about it from the perspective of, I'm not sure that you need me. Like, I'm not sure that you need marketing, for example, right? Like, and then that proceeds to like, let's talk about your situation. Let's talk about what's going on. And then maybe the prescription is that you would need to remove the tree, but people operate from this perspective of like, especially in a sales situation, they just
no, a little
know that
bit.
the goal is to get sold. So when you can almost talk yourself out of a job, when they're like, oh, they're going to want to do all this work on this tree. And I say, well, hold on a second. Why do you want to remove it? All of a sudden, you go back to the first one, which is you start to gain some more trust with that individual. And then all this ties back in for people that are listening this far. This all ties back into being able to price the job appropriately, right? Because if we have built this relationship, like Apollo just mentioned, we built this relationship with the customer. Now, if somebody else comes along and underbids you, they're not comparing apples to apples. They're not just, they're comparing a true consultation that they received to just somebody that they told what they wanted to have cut, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's important.
Yeah, and I think you said something too really valuable too, and that was being willing to always help. You kind of alluded to it. You didn't say
Yeah.
that word, but it's in my mission statement. Like, uh, I have a really interesting mission statement, but there's a shortened version. But basically, like, I'm not here to exist forever. Basically, right? I'm here to educate people and empower them so they make good decisions that help our communities and our trees.
Mm,
For me, I'm always willing to help others, help my customers, and I make it all about help. Like I'm there to help them. So if that means it doesn't put money in my pocket, I don't care. I was there
right.
to help them. Right.
Yep.
And if you
I
come at it
believe
from
that.
that standpoint, people will hire you because they know that you actually care. Right. And that comes with asking questions. If you're just like in your business, if you have a guy, I come to you and I say, "Hey, I'd like to do some marketing." You're like, "Well, we do this, that, and the other thing, and this is how we do it, and blah 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 blah." And I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, I don't know." But if you're like, "Well, what's going on? Like, are you having problems with marketing? How much marketing you have? Like, okay, how much leads do you have? Like, what are the things that are happening?" Like, now you're asking me questions to find out
Yeah.
how you can help me,
Yep.
right? And I think
That's
if we
that's been the
all look at
coolest
business
thing.
that way, but if we all looked at business that way, dude, things would change so much. You know what I mean? And that's,
100%.
I see it all the time on these Facebook groups, and I don't want to dog a lot of Facebook groups, but I don't like the fact that you can't, you know, maybe give some advice because other people have some sort of axe to grind themselves, you know, something that's
I know
monetary, let's
exactly.
say, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And
Exactly.
that really annoys me. And I see you'll probably know what I'm talking about when I say this, but like a lot of dudes are like, value, value, value. You gotta build the value. Well, what the fuck does that mean?
Mean, right? Yeah. Like,
Yeah. So I'm telling you what that means. That means you have to ask questions. You have to find out what their problems are and help them, but really help them, not just try to make money, because
Right.
that's not
Those
building
are two
value.
different things, right?
There's
Like,
no value in that,
yeah, I
like
truly
you are
believe that
literally
money
racing to the bottom doing that.
100%. Money
Yeah,
follows value, right? And so my job as a
absolutely.
business owner, as a human being, is to just put as much value out there as possible. And not everybody's going to be my customer, and that's okay. But that value will make you find your customers, right?
Yeah, I mean, if
We
you
have
think
gone,
about sorry.
yeah, we've gone a lot of different directions. We've gone over time. I want to make sure that we stay on track here. I love to ask this question. Where do you think the tree service industry is heading in the next 5 to 10 years? And the reason I ask is
Oof.
obviously there's a lot happening with AI, there's a lot happening with mechanization. It seems like every day there's some new system or platform that's coming up. So, and then also you have the legislation side of it. So what would you be your prediction with what we're going to see happen in the next 5 to 10?
So you and I could talk for a very long time, I think,
Hmm.
by the way.
Yeah, yeah. We might need to have a part two.
We should, because I didn't finish the last two, which is price and when you're going to do the job. But it's not as important as the first three anyway. Dude, I run OpenClaw on a Mac Mini, a white Mac Mini myself. Like I'm super into AI. I feel like it's scary. It is, you know. And I'm not saying that because I don't understand it. A lot of people say that because they think it's going to take their job. That's not why I think it's scary.
Hmm.
Okay. But I also believe that I don't want to be at the back trying to fight my way forward. I want to be in
Yeah,
the front in the industry. I want to be at the front of things. I want to know what's happening. And so I intend to be there. And most street guys I don't think are doing the stuff I'm doing, you know? So
right.
um
I don't know that I've heard of somebody talking about OpenClaw that that I've had on this show yet. I actually had the other night over the weekend. I had my first AI, like that's that moment that you're talking about of like, oh shit, like this might be I have had some fear about it. And it's not because like I've been super, pro AI and I don't want any restrictions and let's use the technology, but I built an AI agent that I was able to give it a simple like
yeah,
command and it was
Claude
able to
Cowork.
that's what I just, yep, cloud code.
Uh,
And it went in and
I use that
made all
too.
the revisions to the website. And I was like, this used to take 3 hours of manpower and
Or
I just did it
longer.
in seven. Yeah. And so,
Dude,
yeah,
my new website that's not up yet, it's almost done, is all done with MCP, Windsor AI. I'm gonna be running it from with Claude from the background. I'm there with you because I want to
yeah.
know everything. So where I think the industry is going is like, who knows? I will say that I think that if you're concerned about like losing your job, I think we're pretty safe there. I do think, and I've been saying this for a long time, and I just see it more and more. And I already alluded to this when I was talking about general contractors that sub anything. I think you're going to see this industry primarily like big corporations and small companies. Like
Yeah.
companies like mine are going to be like, and
Yeah.
either merge with the corporations
Get
or,
acquired, private equity, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, or or we're gonna, cause what's happening to us is like we have big company costs, but we don't have a big company. We're
Mm,
26 or 28 people total. That's not, a lot of people think that's big, but like in the tree business, but it's not.
right. In the
That's a
grand scheme
small
of things.
business. Yeah. Yeah. So we can't withstand those costs moving forward. So that's what I see happening. And I'm already seeing this. Pretty cool. I know we don't have time, but there was an Instagram post like 3, 4 years ago that got sent around that I shared with some people. And I was like, I think this is what's gonna happen. And now I'm seeing it. I'm like, holy
You're
shit.
seeing it actually happen.
So what it is this hipster kid that didn't know jack about tree work, right? Like never even used a chainsaw in his life, but he was good at marketing. He understand digital marketing. I do think that's really important, by the way. Uh, I think it's good to have someone like yourself that's good at it, that gives a shit about someone's business. That's important. Most marketers don't. They just care
Right.
about money. But or you got to know it, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening is that so this kid, I say kid, he was young. He's he starts putting out yard signs. He did it all cheap on the cheap, right? Puts out he goes through the whole thing. He says, if I was gonna make six-figure income, and I needed to do it fast, I'd start a tree service. Here's how I do it. And he just goes through boom how he's gonna do it. And then he did it, and he shows the money and everything like that in 1 year, and it was incredible, right?
That's amazing.
And I was like, wow, he did it in Texas. The kid could speak Spanish, so he hired all Latino crews, right? And he interviewed guys. He said it right in it. If they show up in like a lifted truck and they're white, tell them to piss off, right? And then, which is terrible, but
He's
this is what
focused
I'm
on
just saying.
profitability, I guess.
I'm not saying that. I didn't say that. He said that, right? So then he'd have them go out. They'd walk a job site. I hate to even be saying this in public because I feel like it's true, Anyway, he walks the job site with him, and then, they don't. He's kind of buffering between them and the client. So then he says, "All right, I get back to you." The guy walks off, or the guy. He says to the guy how much you do it for, away from the client. Then he comes back to the client and he doubles the price and sells the job, and then he collects the money, right? So all he's running around doing is writing proposals on a laptop and doing digital marketing, right? Handling the
Ugh,
customers.
yeah.
So I know several people that are doing exactly that at this point. And one of them has had a business he's a tree guy, has been in business for 35 something years. And he's a very good arborist. He fired everybody like 2, 3 years ago. And that's all he does. He subs all the work.
So I think the biggest takeaway that I got there is
Yeah.
the guy that's actually doing the work and pricing the job doesn't know what the true value is, right? And like being able, a lot of times we have 100% markup on a job that we could be charging that we're just afraid that, we think that if we come in cheap enough, then we're going to win the work. But sometimes you don't really want that work anyway.
Yeah.
So,
It's true. And that guy that we're talking about does understand the value, right? So
mhm,
he's getting, because especially when his only job, right? Like I wear so many different hats as an owner and the CEO, whatever, right? So like I got so many things I got to do. I don't really have time to put all the time into a customer that I really should, right?
mhm,
That's why I use Claw and some Open Claw and some other things.
yeah,
I'm trying to build in those systems. But if you spend the time with the clients, let's say your only thing is you got to write proposals, deal with a customer, and collect a check, basically. Maybe a little bit of like walk, which is really a small business owner around,
mhm,
right? He has a vested interest in getting the job done so he can get paid. At that point, you're not managing equipment, you're not dealing with insurance, you're not dealing with the lawsuits, you're not dealing with all this stuff that you have to deal with when you have a business, and you can focus more on the customer. So in fact, he's charging more than he's ever charged before, right?
yeah,
And
because
no,
he's
he's not
actually
doing that.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's not doing the half thing where he's taking half from them. I think that seems a little bit crazy, but
right.
another girl that we trained as a salesman is doing that too. And she's a good arborist. She's not a good tree worker, but like she's actually pretty smart. She can write. She's really actually a great salesperson and very good talker. So she's going out, and now she told me the other day that all these city employees are asking her what she's doing because they want to like quit their job or retire and do what she's doing. Like, just wait till
Mhm,
that happens.
yeah.
Like we already have that problem around here. We have some older city arborists that have retired with pensions and they go out and do consulting work. Well, they're doing consulting work for like money that's like silly, like you couldn't
Yeah,
even I wouldn't even leave my house for that.
right. I
I'm
wouldn't
just
get
like,
out
what
of
are you
bed for that.
yeah, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like you don't realize the risk in this business. Like you just did a consulting job for $150, where you wrote you wrote a proposal, you drove there, you drove back, you wrote a proposal, right? And that proposal took you 3, 4 hours. So you got 5 or 6 hours into it for $150. Like you're out of your
Mhm,
mind. Now what happens when you get sued on it? You know?
exactly. How much of that 150 did you set aside for legal fees?
Right. They didn't. So and that's
So,
that's
if
that's that's
somebody
gonna be an interesting thing too.
yeah. So, if somebody's listening to this right now and they're stuck, let's say that they're doing 3 to 500K per year and they really got ambitions to get to a seven-figure company, what would be the first thing that you would tell them to fix?
I'd say the first thing you do is get profit first and analyze your business. and don't go
I would
anywhere
agree
until
with
you
that.
have that figured out.
Yeah, because there's
I
no
don't
use in
think
building a cash eating machine.
it's bullshit. You're just gonna be working for the people that work for you anyway if you do that. Which listen, I love my guys. I feel a little bit like these days I've been working for them. And not that I don't love them, but as you get older and you want to spend time with your family and your kids, you start to question more things. Like when I was 24 or 25, I told you I have two generations of kids. So like my 18 and my 16-year-old, I'm very close with them, and my wife is amazing. So she always has made me like be part of the family because I'm a workaholic. I would just work all the time, but she insisted
Yeah.
on me being there. But I will say that like my employees and everybody else was going to soccer games and football games and with their kids, and I was busy working my ass off so
Mm,
that they could have a paycheck. And like I just look back now and I'm like, damn, I don't want to do that with my two younger kids. They're 7 and 4. Like I don't want to be. I want to go see their soccer games. That'd be cool.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
can I be allowed to do that? You
Can
know.
I come
So
play too?
yeah, yeah. So like that, I think the critical thing is that the finance, dude. I really do.
Yeah, if your finances are on point, there's more specifically, there's no reason to grow the business if you don't understand.
That's right. And there's no reason to grow the business if you're not gonna make any money. Like, why
Right.
not just go work for somebody, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. That
There's
was
so
our
I mean,
first year. Our first year was I was putting in 60 hours a week for free, like,
right.
basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Where can people find you if somebody stumbles across this?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find. My name's unique. So if you Google Apollo O'Neill, you'll find me. But I'm in Pinellas County, Florida, and Palm Harbor, Clearwater area.
Any socials you want to shout out? I know you mentioned that you've
Yeah.
got that software company.
Yeah. So we have Prospect Primer. It's prospectprimer.com. It's their custom white labeled animated videos that you put your branding on. It looks like your stuff, and you send it to customers before you get there to educate them. So you don't have to spend so much time talking about product and service, like we just talked about,
Very
right?
nice. Very
Or
nice.
building the credibility and image. You get to spend more time talking about fishing and whatever else, right? So you get them to watch it, and the system does that all for you. So you enter their name, number, email address, phone number, and it texts and emails them custom templates that you can make, or you can use the ones that we have in the inventory. It goes to them, it checks whether or not they've read it, or sorry, whether they've watched it or not by every second. So you know if they've watched it or not, right? And then it sends them an email thanking them. You can give them a discount code, or you can say, hey, if you watch these videos, the estimate's free. If you don't watch these videos, the estimate's 150 bucks, right? So there's different ways you can deliver that. And we've seen these videos produce a lot more revenue per job. So the revenue per job goes up. Like most companies will double on, especially on the small jobs, their numbers go way up. And then
Wow.
your closing percentage goes up. There is a caveat though. It does seem to also detract tire kickers too.
Yeah.
So
Which is a good caveat. It's a good thing to
right.
have.
Like the people
Yeah.
that are looking for price tend to be like, yeah, I don't think this is the right company. And then
Yeah.
they move
Because
on.
they're polished. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So that's Prospect Primer. Obviously, O'Neill's Tree Service is the tree care company, and then I own part of an irrigation company called Local Irrigation as well. So
We're not going to prison this time.
no, no, we have our state license,
Okay.
so
You're
we're
legit.
good.
You're legit.
We're good. We're legit.
Dude,
So
Apollo,
yeah,
I appreciate it. We're probably going to have to do another conversation because this was incredible.
it was awesome, dude. Yeah,
Yeah, if you're listening and you got value from this episode, it's probably because you realize that you don't necessarily have a lead problem or maybe a revenue problem. Maybe you have a positioning problem or a sales problem. And that's the difference between the guys that are staying stuck and the guys that are going to scale. So we appreciate you all for tuning in. This is another episode of the Branching Out podcast. Thanks again, Apollo.
see you, dude.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.